Get to the chopper to hit that gas, man. Them niggas were jumping out that hole. I said, God damn. Ooh-wee. Glad ain't nobody like no cigarette. Kaboom. But yeah, brother. Now I'm gonna tell you this about, like I say, me and her not girlfriend and boyfriend, but we real cool. We been knowing each other damn near 8 years now, man. Time done flown by. But this is the story about how she took me to her son's drug manufacturing plant slash distribution center. This nigga didn't have a trap house. This nigga had a fucking DC motherfucking manufacturing dope. Not bagging it up. He was manufacturing that bitch. But this is a disclosure. This is for educational purpose only. The names have been changed to protect the innocent and all that. So okay, let me
Entertainment purposes only.
yeah, entertainment purposes only. So okay. Now this is how like I say, the way we end up getting over there is a story by itself. But so I'm gonna tell you how it started. I think it was a Thursday. So she was at my house and we was sitting in there and she always bringing, like I say, his mama. I don't know what the fuck she is. You can call her a drug dealer, but I don't know. But his mama was over there, and she brought me some candy cane. I was like, yeah, let me get some. So she was like, all right. So I think I gave us. I mean, I always give her money, but I gave her some money. So she was like, huh, take this, just take this. I'm gonna be back. So I gave her the money. Like I say, she didn't come back to the next day, but I'm tell you why she came back. So I'm sitting there, it's around 11 o'clock. I'm like, oh, it's time to go to bed. It's time to, for my daily routine. Shit, just the way that it was at this time in my life. Fuck. So I reached for my recreational narcotics and so I began to indulge. So as I'm indulging, I'm sitting back like, hmm, this shit ain't right. So I didn't get too anxious. I sat there about 10, 15 minutes, didn't want to inhale too much. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting. So after 20, 30 minutes, I'm starting to get upset now. I'm like, wait a minute now. You don't bring me no recreational bullshit. I said, when it's time to fly and get high, hey, that's what we trying to do. So I got mad and I called her on FaceTime. I said, hey, Cinnamon, that's what we gonna call her. I said, man, what's up with this? What's up with what? I said, bitch, don't play with me. She was like, "Well, don't play with you. How? What are you talking about?" I said, man, where did you get this boo? I got it from where I always get it from. I said, well, I tell you what. I said, you see this bullshit? This is going down the commode. I said, I tell you what. You tell whoever you got this bullshit from that I am highly upset and I want to file a customer complaint because this is bullshit. I spend good money for my recreational narcotics, and you gonna bring? She said, "You ain't even pay for it. I gave it to you." I said, "Well, yeah, that's kind of true, but still." I said, "You don't service your customers like this." I flushed that shit down. You gonna flush? I said, "You see me doing it, don't you?" I said, "What the fuck you mean?" I said, "I demand perfect customer service." So anyway, so I went to sleep and it was like about 11 o'clock in the morning, probably like 10 something. She come beating on the door. Boom, boom, boom. I hop up. I said, man, who the fuck is it? It's me. I open the door up and she coming in. Now, what you crying about? I said, I'm crying about the bullshit you bought me, baby. I said, don't you love me, baby? I said, I don't understand. I said, you needed a stove. Tony got you a stove. I said, you ran out of gas. I gave you enough gas to run your stove for the next 6 months, and you do this to me? And she was like, ain't
Yes,
nobody.
indeed.
What'd you say?
Yes, indeed.
I said, this how you do, Tony? When I'm trying to blast off and go to Mars, I said, you can't even get me there? She was like, boy, ain't nobody playing no games with you. So she said, let's go. I said, where we going? He said, we going to see my son. I said, okay. So we called the Uber. Now, I wasn't prepared, ready, or expecting any of this shit that I was about to participate in, man. This shit was this is one of the things in my life. It's like, well, you will never forget this. So we get in the Uber, and like I said, she stayed 30 minutes away from me, but his manufacturing plant, because that's what it is like off in the kind of like off in the jungle or whatever, you know. So um we get over there, we get out the car, boom. We gotta walk. I said, why is we walking? Why ain't you get the Uber? Just come on here. So it's funny because we walking through the neighborhood and she grabbed my arm. And I hear people, oh, that's your husband. And like I said, I don't have no problem with that. 'Cause like I said, we very good friends. But yeah, we got on, hold on, I'm gonna tell you this one. So we walking, right? So we get to this house, big ass house, and it got a gate, a big green gate. That's what I remember that. So we get up to the door, and she knocks on the door.
Right.
I'm still not thinking nothing of it. So a girl opened the door, and man, when we walked up in there, bro, I swear to you, bro, I walked through the door, and to my right was a wall, and lined up against this wall was at least 10 to 12 damn near naked bitches, man. And I'm looking, I'm like, what the? I'm like, why you bring me to a hoe house? She's like, this ain't no hoe house. I say, the hell it ain't. I say, why they ain't got no clothes on? And she like, well, they working. I said, well, it's a hoe house. She said, no, it's not. So okay. So I'm like, all right. So I'm focused on these young tenderonis over here. I said, huh. I said, these motherfuckers looking good standing over here. So they doing what they do. So I mean, we had a pool table in that bitch. So we walked to the back. And she's like I said, she started talking to her son. He's sitting back there. And this is the first thing that came to my mind when I seen what I seen. I couldn't believe it. I said, see these rap niggas be talking? I said, they seen this nigga will put them to shame. And he actually living it. Bro, this nigga had Tupperware bins full of dope. Not a brick, not kilo. This nigga had a Tupperware thing that you put your clothes in and put them in the storage.
Yeah.
He had those full of dope. And it was crazy because before they turn it into powder, it's a paste. And I'm looking around, I'm like, where the fuck we at? You know what I'm saying? So what happened after that? So I'm looking like at these Tupperware bins. Cause when I first seen them, I said, I know that ain't what I think it is. I said, I couldn't even imagine a nigga having this much work. He had it. He had them bitches stacked on top of each other, man. And had a motherfucking a thing that you get flour out of it. Like you get flour out of a big bag, like at a bakery. He was
Yeah.
he had one of those. That nigga had a Tupperware bin full of X pills and all kind of shit. So his mama started talking to him, and then he looked at me like Amiga, what's up? I'm like, I said, young man, I said, I don't know what the fuck you got going on. I said, but that's gonna put your ass under the jail. He started laughing. I'm like, well, warning comes before destruction. So anyway, he was like, you not satisfied? I said, man, that was some bullshit your mama brought me. He like, nah, man. He said, it's okay, Amiga. I take care of you. Now, this is another thing he do. Like I said, before they turn it into that powder, which is like I say, cocaine is supposed to be a dark brown. But you know, like when we get it over here, it's not. It's a paste. And it's like gum. And what they do is they'll get like a needle or whatever and roll it up and it'd be like the head of a needle sized ball and they just stick it in their nose and I guess it
Yeah.
absorb through their membranes that way. So I'm still like thrown off by all this Miami Vice shit he got going on. And I maybe he had one of his kids in there. They would be kid on a field trip to the trap house or what's the DC, the distribution center. But
Right.
I remember he was looking me in the back. He was like, man, because like I said, I even been knowing it. Like I said, I didn't even know she had a son that old. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, she got
Right.
6 fucking kids, and I wouldn't be surprised. And like I said, I love her to death, but I wouldn't be surprised if all her kids for a different man. That woman is wild, man. So so we get back there, and he got his crew doing whatever. They're like, "What's up, amigo?" I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, boy, y'all niggas is crazy. I said, matter of fact, let me drop a pin so I can get back here later and see what's up with them bitches in the front. I said, cause with his mama, she gonna trip. Anyway, so I did that. But like I said, it's like a brown paste, and they was putting something to it, and it was turning, and like I said, they was turning it into the powder. So I remember he said, "You not satisfied?" I said, "No." That nigga said, "Don't worry about it." And he gave his mama, uh, I don't know what this would have been, but it was okay. Imagine if you made a snowball in your hand.
Right.
That's how much work was in that bag, and he gave it to his mama. And then he was like, man, that's good, man. You gonna be all right. I said, man, I said, boy, you know some niggas would, I know niggas that'll kill for this. And like I told somebody, they don't really do it, but when they do it, when they make rocks or whatever, them bitches look
Yeah.
like it come out like I said, like a Tootsie Roll pop. Imagine a like a root beer Tootsie Roll pop, right? You know how you bite a Tootsie Roll pop, it break.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
rocks supposed to look like that or whatever. But anyway, let me hurry up and get on with the story. So me and her walk back outside, and I'm still blown away by what this young man is doing. Cause like I said, he wasn't even the head nigga. I ended up meeting the head nigga later on in the battle. But I looked at her. I said, do you approve of what he's doing? We trying to make it. I said, well, yeah, y'all gonna make it all right. See, y'all gonna make it very far. Y'all gonna make it. I said, your son is a pimp, a drug lord. I said, this nigga right here is really living the life. But
Right.
anyway, we got back in the car, got in the Uber, and we went to go partake in recreational narcotics. And like you said, like I say, it's, I think it's about 2 women in my life that seen me do drugs, but ain't nobody else that ever seen me do nothing. So we got back, and she was like, huh. I said, hold on. I thought that whole bag was for me. He said, boy, hell no. This is for me to sell. I said, boy, you sell drugs, pussy. I said, what you don't do? Well, I ain't got a man that take care of me. I told her, I said, the reason you ain't got a man, 'cause can't no man handle you. Shit. But anyway, so later on, like I said, I only do drugs. Well, I only used to do drugs between the hours of 5 and 9. Those were my quiet time hours. So she like, well, I know you ain't gonna do nothing, so I'm finna go. I was like, yeah. She was like, then she had me. She said, why you ain't got no kids? I said, cause I only attract women like you. She was like, well, what that supposed to mean? I said, there's nothing wrong with you. I said, I just can't handle you, baby. I said I couldn't imagine myself being emotionally attached to you. I said, and then think about this. I said, if we did have a child together, I said, could you imagine that child? I said, the child, mama, out here selling drugs and pussy. I said, the child's father flying around the world doing recreational drugs as well. I said, that ain't no environment that I want. I said, yeah, I couldn't imagine if it was a girl, you know. So yeah, man. Like I said, he redeemed himself though after he brought that shit back. But he gave me what he gave me. But yeah, man,
Right.
that was a wild story, brother. I'm talking about naked bitches everywhere. I asked the niggas, how y'all work with all these fine ass women walking around? And it wasn't like on the move. Not on the move. They had them bitches in there doing cutting up the work, and they man, it wasn't nothing like that. And they got a pool back there. This nigga, hey man, this nigga was living the Scar. Let's say they probably got the idea from Scarface from that young man.
Right.
Yeah, man, but that's what happened that day, man. But